The scholar presentation is on John Kenneth Galbraith. Galbraith was a leading proponent of 20th century American liberalism. His books, which covered economics topics, were bestsellers from the 1950s through to the 2000s. As an economist, Galbraith leaned towards the post-Keynesian economics from an institutionalist perspective. John Kenneth Galbraith was born on the 15th of October 1908 in Iona Station, Ontario, Canada. He died on April 29, 2006 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the United States of America. He was an economist and a public servant. He was raised in Dunwich Township, Ontario. Galbraith's main ideas were centered around the influence of the market power of large corporations. He was active in politics and he served under the administrations of Franklin D. Roosevelt, Harry S. Truman, John F. Kennedy, and Lyndon B. Johnson. He was the United States ambassador to India under the Kennedy administration, and he was also president of the American Economic Association. As indicated above, Galbraith was a prominent figure in 20th century institutional economics, and he provided an exemplary institutionalist perspective on economic power. He was a liberal who believed government had a large role to play in the economy. His works include best-selling books throughout the 1950s and through the 2000s. His major contributions to the field of economics is the so-called American Capitalism Trilogy, The Affluent Society, The New Industrial State, and Economics and the Public Purpose. His clear writing and speaking style engaged audiences in most ways other economics couldn't. Galbraith used that power in books like The Affluent Society. His explanations of many economic phenomena were richly laced with common sense psychology, and he did not lose sight of the fact that economics is at base a humanity. Within Galbraith's theory of modern capitalism, there are several theories that challenge orthodox economics. Two of the most important theories are his notion of the dependence effect and his theory of the behavior of the firm. The dependence effect. According to Galbraith, modern capitalism is dominated by large enterprises and characterized by an abundance of country-once thought of the product of corporate planning and massive advertising. His point is that producers decide what shall be produced and then mold consumers' tastes so that they buy these products. Galbraith's theory of consumer demand has an important policy implication, which is that there will be an under-allocation of resources to public goods. Galbraith calls this circumstance the social imbalance. The social imbalance, which is the creation of artificial wants through advertising and the propensity for emulation shifts resources towards private goods and away from public goods that have greater inherent value. One way which he proposes that we can remedy this imbalance would be for government to increase taxes in order to reduce conspicuous consumption and then use this proceeds from the taxes to increase the availability of public sector goods and services, a view which he emphasized in his book The Affluent Society, which he stated that post-World War America needed to make investments in items such as highways and education by using funds from general taxation in order for them to be successful. Furthermore, Galbraith's theory of the firm. The neoclassical theory of the firm concludes that corporate behavior and performance can best be understood by assuming that firms will attempt to maximize their profits. According to Galbraith, this may be true in the market sector where owners of small firms actively manage their enterprises, but this does not describe the far more important planning sector, which has the largest firms that produce over half of the society's output. In the planning sector, however, ownership and control are divorced. Therefore, in order to keep the funds, board of directors will try their best to maximize shareholders' returns. Their main objective, which is much more complex than profit maximization. Galbraith categorized their objectives as protective and affirmative. On the one hand, the protective purpose of the firm is survival. That is the need to earn a profit sufficient to keep most stockholders relatively happy and to provide sufficient return earning for investment and growth. Under these circumstances, majority of large firms will try to escape from competition by either fixing the price directly or by its understanding of other similar companies in the industry. A neoclassicist will view this as maximizing joint profit by limiting the quantity of production, while Galbraith treats this less than maximizing profit as an assurance for rivals to survive. The major affirmative purpose of the firm is corporate growth. The growth of output, sales, and revenues produce greater employment security and financial rewards to the members of the technostructure. Galbraith's theory of the firm has several interesting policy implications, an example of which is traditional antitrust efforts should be abandoned. Nothing has yet happened to arrest the development and burgeoning power of the technostructure. Galbraith has received numerous criticisms, most especially by orthodox economists. One of the famous criticisms Galbraith has received is the fact that he seems to deny that the consumer has free will, that the buyer is unable to determine his own interests and act on them. Orthodox economics reject this view and the idea that some other entity other than consumers might be able to best determine what is in the best consumer's interest. They typically view Galbraith as more of a social theorist than an economist, or rather as an ambitious system builder who prefers to substitute generalizations for rigorous analysis. On a more personal level, economists tend to regard Galbraith with the same disdain which he has shown on them by ridiculing their outdated views of the firm and their inability to explain what is going on in the real world because of an infatuation with unrealistic formal modeling. Finally, and in conclusion, Galbraith's attacks on economics orthodoxy, like those of Veblen before him, could be said to have actually forced neoclassicists to temporarily hold their advance and for them to acknowledge and even engage with the opposition. His book, The Affluent Society, contributed to the war on poverty, given the fact that he had the ear of President Kennedy. The book also contributed to the government spending policy introduced by the administrations of Kennedy and Johnson. He also inspired the public to be cautious of media and advertisements. Another interesting factor is the relationship between Galbraith and the two heterodox schools of thought, which are the institutionalist and the post-Keynesian schools of thoughts, both schools and scholars in both schools which have expressed great admiration for his work. Galbraith's system paves the way for fusion of ideas of Veblen, Keynes, and Kalecki in an updated and comprehensive vision of the modern economy, forming a foundation for renewed efforts towards producing an alternative to the conventional wisdom. Thank you very much.